The orbital station hung in space like a massive ring of silver and glass, circling the blue-green planet below. Inside its largest chamber, representatives from 40 different species waited in silent attention. Some stood on legs, others floated in containment fields, and a few existed as patterns of light against the walls. This was the Galactic Council, and today they were meeting the newest species to discover faster-than-light travel. Taman walked into the chamber with steady steps, his dark suit a sharp contrast to the colorful robes and natural armor of the aliens around him. Beside him, Hyejin carried a data tablet, her eyes taking in every detail of the enormous room. They had prepared for this moment for months, ever since Earth's first probe had been intercepted by Council scouts. High Chancellor Morith occupied the central platform, its crystalline body refracting light into rainbow patterns across the floor. When it spoke, the sound came from everywhere at once, translated instantly into Korean through their ear devices. "Humans of Earth," Morith's voice resonated through the chamber. "You have achieved what only 207 species before you have accomplished. You have broken the barrier between stars. The Galactic Council welcomes you to observe our proceedings and to learn if you are ready to join our community." Taman bowed slightly, a gesture Hyejin had assured him would be seen as respectful rather than submissive. "High Chancellor, we are honored. Humanity comes in peace, seeking knowledge and friendship among the stars." Ambassador Vrel, an insectoid creature with 4 arms and compound eyes that glittered like gems, chittered softly. "Peace is the foundation of our council. For 12,000 years we have maintained harmony through understanding. Understanding begins with knowledge. Knowledge begins with classification." Hyejin leaned forward slightly, her curiosity evident. "Classification?" Morith's crystalline form pulsed with soft light. "Indeed, every species has nature. Nature determines behavior. Behavior determines threat. We have developed the Threat Classification Index over millennia. It allows us to predict, prepare, and prevent conflict before it begins." A holographic display materialized in the center of the chamber, showing a vertical scale numbered 1 through 9. Beside each number, images of different creatures appeared with accompanying text. "Level 1, Vrel explained, gesturing with 2 of its arms. "Herbivores, docile, no territorial aggression. They pose no threat to others." The image showed something resembling a floating jellyfish with gentle, waving tentacles. "Level 2 and 3 are scavengers and small-pack animals. Level 4 includes herd species with basic tool use. Level 5 encompasses ambush predators and defensive species." The images changed with each description, showing increasingly complex and capable creatures. Taman watched with growing interest. Hyejin made notes on her tablet, her scientific mind already analyzing the system. "Level 6, Morith continued, marks the threshold of significant threat, cooperative hunters, strategic thinkers. Species at this level require careful monitoring when they achieve space travel." "Level 7 through 9, Vrel added, its voice dropping lower, "are the apex predators. The Krell, with their armored hides and warrior culture. The Vinthex, whose hive mind can coordinate attacks across entire star systems. The Mordrax, territorial carnivores who have conquered 15 worlds through pure aggression." The images showed fearsome creatures. The Krell stood 3 meters tall, covered in overlapping plates of natural armor. The Vinthex moved as a coordinated swarm, thousands acting as one. The Mordrax had 6 limbs ending in razor-sharp claws, their faces dominated by rows of serrated teeth. "These are the most dangerous species in known space," Morith said. "They occupy level 9. We call them apex because nothing in nature stands above them. They are the pinnacle of predatory evolution." Silence filled the chamber as the council waited for the human response. Taman studied the display, his expression thoughtful. Hyejin glanced at him, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. They had discussed something like this might happen. "This is impressive," Taman said finally. "You've created a comprehensive system to maintain peace. I appreciate the logic behind it." Vrel's antennae twitched. "You do not seem concerned about where humans might fall in this classification." "Should we be?" Hyejin asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. "Most species are," Morith observed. "They fear being ranked too low or too high. Both have consequences." Taman nodded slowly. "I suppose that makes sense." "Where do you think humans would rank? I'm curious about your initial assessment." The council members exchanged glances, communications passing between them in frequencies and methods the humans couldn't detect. Finally, Morith spoke again. "That is what we must determine. Your physiology suggests level 4 or 5. You are omnivores with binocular vision. You use tools. You form social groups. But we have not yet observed enough to make a final classification." "Fair enough," Taman said. He paused, then added with genuine interest. "Though I do have one question about your system." "Ask," Morith invited. "You said level 9 is apex, the pinnacle. Nothing stands above the apex predators." Taman looked directly at the crystalline chancellor. "But what if something did? What's above apex?" The chamber fell absolutely silent. The floating species stopped drifting. The standing species became still as statues. Even the patterns of light on the walls seemed to freeze in place. Hyejin felt the change in atmosphere immediately, though she couldn't identify what had caused it. Beside her, Taman maintained his calm expression, waiting for an answer to what seemed like a reasonable question. It was Vrel who broke the silence, its voice carrying an edge the humans hadn't heard before. "No species has ever asked that question." "Really?" Taman seemed genuinely surprised. "It seems like a natural thing to wonder about. If you have a classification system that goes to 9, surely there's a possibility of something beyond that." Morith's crystalline body pulsed with colors the humans had no names for. When it spoke, its voice carried a weight that made the air itself feel heavier. "In 12,000 years of maintaining this index, across 207 species evaluated, you are the first to ask what exists beyond our highest classification." The Chancellor paused, and the humans could sense something like concern in its tone. "There is a reason for that, Taman of Earth." "What reason?" Hyejin asked softly. "Because," Morith said, its voice dropping to barely above a whisper, "the only species who would ask such a question are those who might actually reach that level. And nothing that has ever existed above apex has survived." The holographic display flickered and went dark. In the sudden absence of light, the council chamber felt vast and cold. Taman and Hyejin stood together in that darkness, aware that their simple question had changed something fundamental about how the council viewed humanity. When the lights returned, Morith addressed them with formal gravity. "Your evaluation will begin tomorrow. We will determine where humanity stands in the order of things. But know this, humans of Earth. Some questions are dangerous not because they have answers, but because only dangerous beings think to ask them." The session ended. As Taman and Hyejin left the chamber, neither of them spoke, but both understood that their first meeting with the Galactic Council had revealed more than either side had intended. The observation deck overlooked a vast testing facility where Council scientists conducted their evaluations. Taman stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching as technicians moved between stations below. Beside him, Jiho reviewed tactical displays on a holographic screen, while Subin worked at a nearby console, her fingers dancing across controls that translated human data into formats the council could process. Hyejin entered the deck carrying a container of coffee, the familiar smell a small comfort in the alien environment. "They're ready for us," she said, handing Taemin a cup. "Counselor Thex wants to begin with physical assessments." "Of course they do," Jiho said without looking up from his screens. The military commander had been skeptical of this entire process from the beginning. "They want to see if we're strong enough to be worth worrying about." "Or weak enough to ignore," Subin added, pulling up a new dataset. "I've been reviewing what they've published about other species. The pattern is clear. Physical capability determines initial classification. Everything else is secondary." Taemin sipped his coffee and considered this. "Then let's show them what they want to see, honestly. No exaggerations, no hiding anything. If we're going to join their council, they need to see us as we actually are." 3 hours later, the first round of testing was complete. The results displayed across multiple screens in the council's analysis chamber. Counselor Thex, a reptilian creature with silver scales and yellow eyes, studied the data with obvious disappointment. "Humans are unremarkable," Thex announced to the assembled council members. "Average muscle density comparable to level 4 species, running speed below galactic median, bite force negligible, no natural weapons, no armor, no venom, visual range limited to a narrow spectrum. Hearing adequate but not exceptional." Vrel clicked its mandibles thoughtfully. "Their technology shows sophistication, but their biology suggests they should not have survived to develop it. How did such a vulnerable species reach the top of their planet's food chain?" "That's an interesting question," Hyejin said, from where she stood with the other humans. The council had allowed them to observe the analysis. "May I explain?" Moreth's crystalline form pulsed with acceptance. "Please. We are curious about this apparent contradiction." Hyejin stepped forward, and Subin activated a holographic display showing Earth's evolutionary history. "You're looking at us wrong. We're not apex predators because of physical strength. We're apex predators because of what we can do over time." The display showed early humans tracking prey across vast distances. "We're persistence hunters. We don't chase prey until we catch it. We follow it until it collapses from exhaustion. A human can run for hours, days if necessary. Very few animals on Earth can match our endurance." Thex's eyes narrowed. "Endurance hunting requires tracking ability." "Correct," Hyejin continued. "Binocular vision gives us depth perception. We can track subtle signs across any terrain. Broken branches, disturbed soil, blood drops. Our pattern recognition abilities let us predict where prey will go next." Subin added new data to the display. "Our brains dedicate significant processing power to modeling other minds. We don't just track where an animal went. We predict what it will do based on understanding how it thinks." "This is level 6 behavior at minimum," Vrel observed, its tone shifting from dismissive to interested. "Cooperative hunting with predictive modeling." "There's more," Jiho said, his military background showing in how he framed the information. "Humans are omnivores. We can eat almost anything: plants, meat, insects, fungi. If it has calories, we can probably digest it. That means we can survive in nearly any environment." The council members were paying closer attention now. Moreth's colors shifted to deeper, more contemplative shades. "Show them the domestication data," Taemin suggested quietly. Subin nodded and pulled up new images. They showed wolves, then dogs, horses, cattle, dozens of species that humans had transformed through selective breeding. "Wait," Thex said, leaning forward. "Those are apex predators. Those first animals, the wolves." "We're apex predators," Hyejin corrected. 30,000 years ago, humans domesticated wolves. We turned them into partners. They helped us hunt. We shared food with them. Over generations, they became dogs. Now they're our companions." The silence in the chamber was profound. Vrel's antennae were perfectly still. You domesticated your competitors? Species that hunted the same prey you did? We domesticated everything we couldn't outrun or overpower, Jiho said bluntly. Horses carried us, oxen pulled our tools, dogs tracked prey we couldn't smell. We didn't survive by being the strongest or fastest. We survived by making everything else work for us. Moreth's voice resonated with a new quality, something that might have been concern. This changes the assessment significantly. Tool use combined with domestication of competing predators suggests level 7 classification minimum. There's one more thing, Taman said. All eyes turned to him. All of this, everything we've shown you, we developed while competing with each other. Explain, Moreth commanded. Taman gestured to Subin, who brought up a map of Earth showing different human populations. Humans didn't evolve in isolation. We spread across the entire planet, adapting to every climate, every environment. Deserts, frozen tundra, dense jungles, high mountains. And in each place, we encountered other human groups. We didn't just compete with animals, Hyejin added. We competed with other humans, humans who were just as smart, just as adaptable, just as persistent as we were. Every advantage we developed while fighting against opponents who could think like us. Jiho's expression was grim. The greatest predator humans ever faced was other humans. We evolved to hunt the most dangerous prey in our world, ourselves. The council members exchanged rapid communications. The atmosphere in the chamber had shifted dramatically from the casual assessment that had begun the session. Thex spoke slowly, choosing words carefully. You are persistence predators with extreme adaptability, tool creation capability, domestication of competing species, and evolutionary pressure from intra-species conflict. This profile matches level 7, possibly level 8. That's not possible, another council member protested, a floating creature whose voice came through translation as bubbling water. They have no natural weapons. They're physically weak. They don't need natural weapons, Vrel said quietly. They make weapons. They make everything they need, and they can survive anywhere while doing it. Moreth's colors deepened to shades of purple and black. The question remains, if humans are level 7 or 8, why do they not behave like other high-level predators? They approached us peacefully. They accepted our evaluation without aggression. This is not typical apex behavior. Taman met the Chancellor's gaze steadily. Maybe that's because you're still thinking about this wrong. You're classifying us based on how we compete with other species. But humans learned a long time ago that our biggest advantage wasn't competing. It was cooperating. You cooperate within your species, Thex observed. All pack hunters do that. No. Hyejin said, we cooperate with everyone. We domesticated wolves by cooperating with them, not dominating them. We built civilizations by cooperating with humans who were different from us. We reached the stars by sharing knowledge across our entire species. Subin added quietly, we're dangerous because we're persistent and adaptable. But we're successful because we learned to work together instead of fighting alone. The council fell silent again, processing this information. Finally, Moreth spoke, its voice carrying a gravity that made everyone pay attention. Your evaluation will continue tomorrow with combat simulations. But understand this, humans. You have already exceeded our initial assessment. The question now is not where you rank. The question is whether you are what you claim to be, or whether you are something far more dangerous hiding behind cooperation. As the humans left the chamber, Jiho muttered to Taman, they're scared of us. Yes, Taman agreed, but not for the reasons they think. They're scared because we don't fit their system, and that means they don't know how to predict us. Hyejin looked back at the council chamber. The question is, What do they do with species they can't predict? None of them had an answer, but all of them knew that tomorrow's tests would be more than just combat simulations. They would be a judgment on whether humanity deserved to survive its first contact with the galaxy. The combat simulation chamber was enormous, capable of generating entire environments through a combination of hard light projections and physical obstacles. Minho stood in the center of the preparation area, stretching his arms and rolling his shoulders. The test pilot was built lean and compact, every movement efficient and controlled. "They're generating a Level 6 Predator scenario," Subin said, monitoring the Council's control systems. "Desert environment. Temperature 45 degrees Celsius. Limited water sources." Yuna checked her medical scanner, ready to intervene if the simulation became actually dangerous. The medical officer had objected to these tests, but Taman had insisted they cooperate fully with Council protocols. "His vitals are good. Hydration optimal. He's ready." In the observation gallery above, the Council members assembled to watch. Morith stood at the center, flanked by Vrel and Thex. General Krax of the Krell had also arrived, the massive armored warrior nearly 3 meters tall, its body covered in overlapping plates that had evolved over millions of years to be nearly impenetrable. "This is standard procedure," Vrel explained to the humans in the gallery. "We observe how a species responds to predatory threat, combat capability, strategic thinking, survival instincts. It tells us much about their true nature." The simulation began. The chamber transformed into an endless expanse of red sand and jagged rocks. Heat shimmered in the air. Minho stood alone in the center, wearing only light clothing and carrying no weapons, as the rules required. From behind a rock formation, the predator emerged. It was massive, easily twice Minho's size. With 6 legs ending in claws that left deep gouges in the sand. Its body was covered in thick scales, and its mouth held rows of teeth designed for tearing flesh. The creature was built for this environment, a perfect Level 6 ambush predator. It charged immediately, covering the distance with terrifying speed. Minho didn't run. He dove sideways, rolling behind a boulder just as the predator's claws raked the space where he'd been standing. The creature turned, surprisingly agile for its size, and came at him again. "He's too slow," Thex observed. "The predator will corner him within minutes." But Minho wasn't trying to outrun the creature. As it lunged again, he scrambled up the side of a rock formation, fingers finding holds in the rough surface. The predator crashed into the rock below him, frustrated. "Climbing," Jiho said from the gallery, his arms crossed. "Humans are excellent climbers. Flexible shoulders, strong grip, good balance." The predator tried to follow, but its claws, designed for running and digging, couldn't grip the vertical surface. It circled below, waiting. Minho didn't wait. He moved along the rock face until he found a section where heat and time had created cracks in the stone. He braced himself and kicked hard at a weak point, once, twice. On the third kick, a large piece of rock broke free and tumbled down, striking the predator's head. The creature roared in pain and anger, backing away. "He's using the environment as a weapon," Vrel said, antennae twitching with interest. "All tool users do that at higher levels," Morith replied, but its colors showed uncertainty. What happened next surprised them more. Minho didn't press his advantage. Instead, he moved higher up the rock formation where the predator couldn't reach him. Then he waited. Minutes passed. The predator circled below, growing increasingly agitated. The desert sun beat down mercilessly. Minho found a small depression in the rock that provided shade and settled into it, conserving energy. "What is he doing?" Thex asked, confused. "Waiting," Taman said simply. An hour passed. The predator's movements became slower, its tongue lolling from its mouth. The desert heat was taking its toll. Minho remained in his shaded spot, occasionally sipping from a small pool of water he'd found collected in a rock depression. 2 hours. The predator was visibly suffering now, lying in what little shade it could find, panting heavily. 3 hours. The creature tried to leave, to find water, but each time it moved away from the rock formation, Minho would throw stones at it, driving it back into the open sun. "He's persistence hunting," Hyejin said quietly. "Just like our ancestors did on Earth." Finally, after 4 hours, the predator collapsed from heat exhaustion. Minho climbed down, approached cautiously, verified the creature was unconscious, and raised his hand to signal completion of the test. The simulation ended. The desert vanished, replaced by the clean white walls of the chamber. Medical teams rushed in to check Minho's condition. In the gallery, the council members were silent. General Krax broke that silence with a rumbling laugh that sounded like rocks grinding together. "The human fought like prey," Krax said, its translator giving its words a harsh, grating quality. "Hiding, running, using tricks. But he won. This is not level 6 behavior, this is something else." "I agree," Moreth said slowly, "but we need more data." Yuna's survival test was different. She was placed in a hostile environment simulation, a frozen wasteland with temperatures well below freezing and limited resources. The council expected her to simply survive for 24 hours. She did more than survive. Within the first hour, she had created a shelter from snow and rocks, insulated with plant material she'd found preserved under the ice. She made fire using friction and dried moss. She fashioned a spear from a straight branch and used it to fish through a hole in the ice. By the time the test ended, she had not only survived, but thrived, having created a sustainable camp with food, water, and warmth. "Humans optimize," Subin explained to the fascinated council members. "We don't just survive situations, we improve them. It's instinctive." But the real test came when General Krax himself stepped forward. "I wish to understand these humans better," the massive Krell announced. "I challenge their warrior to combat simulation. If they are truly level 7 or 8, they should be able to face a level 9 apex predator." The chamber fell silent. Krax was not just any Krell. He was a general, a warrior who had fought in hundreds of battles across dozens of worlds. His species had evolved as the ultimate armored predators, and he was among the finest examples of his kind. Jiho stepped forward without hesitation. "I accept." Taman started to object, but Jiho shook his head. "They need to see." "Let them see." The simulation began with simple parameters. No weapons, no special powers, just combat skills and strategy. The arena was neutral. An open space with scattered obstacles. Krax was magnificent in combat. Each movement was precise, powerful, devastating. His armored body could absorb impacts that would shatter human bones. His strikes could crush stone. He was everything an apex predator should be. Jiho didn't try to match him in strength. That would have been suicide. Instead, he moved constantly, never staying in one place, always keeping obstacles between himself and the Krell general. When Krax charged, Jiho dodged. When Krax struck, Jiho wasn't there. "The human is running," Thex observed. "He cannot win by running." But Jiho wasn't just running. He was learning. Each time Krax attacked, Jiho observed the patterns. The general favored his right side. His armor had thinner sections at the joints. He was incredibly strong, but had limitations in flexibility. The fight continued. 5 minutes, 10, 15. Krax's attacks remained powerful, but they were coming slightly slower now. The general's breathing was heavier, audible even through his helmet. Jiho, meanwhile, barely seemed tired. He kept moving, kept dodging, kept making Krax chase him across the arena. 20 minutes, 30. The pattern became clear. Krax would eventually tire. Jiho would outlast him. But Jiho didn't just wait. At 35 minutes, when Krax committed to a powerful overhead strike, Jiho finally engaged directly. He stepped inside the general's reach, too close for the Krell to use his strength effectively, and struck precisely at a joint in the armor. It wasn't a powerful blow, but it didn't need to be. It just needed to hurt. Cracks roared and swung, but Jiho was already gone, back to his pattern of evasion. The fight ended at 47 minutes. Cracks, exhausted and frustrated, signaled his surrender. Not because he was injured, but because he understood that he couldn't catch Jiho, couldn't land a decisive blow, and would eventually collapse from exhaustion. The simulation ended. Both warriors were helped from the arena. Cracks approached Jiho, and for a moment the council thought there might be violence. Instead, the Krell general placed one massive hand on Jiho's shoulder, careful not to crush the smaller being. "You fought like prey," Cracks said, echoing his earlier statement. "But you won like something worse. You won like something that turns predators into prey." "What are you?" Jiho met the general's eyes steadily. "Human. Just human." The council called an emergency session. Taemin and the other humans were asked to wait outside while deliberations took place. They could see through the transparent walls as the council members engaged in heated debate. Subin monitored the data feeds she'd been allowed to access. "They're terrified. The combat results combined with our other traits. They're talking about upgrading us to level 8, Apex adjacent." "That's not good enough," Hyejin said quietly. "They're still thinking of us as predators. Just very efficient ones." Taemin watched Morith's crystalline form pulse with increasingly dark colors. "They're missing the point. They see us win through endurance and strategy and think that makes us dangerous predators. They don't see that we win by refusing to play by the rules of predation." "What do we do?" Minho asked, still recovering from his earlier test. "We wait," Taemin said. "And we hope they realize the truth before they classify us as something we're not. Because if they think we're apex predators, they'll treat us like the Krell or the Vinthex. They'll contain us, monitor us, fear us. And if they classify us wrong," Jiho added grimly, "they'll eventually try to eliminate us, just like they would any apex threat that becomes too dangerous." The humans watched and waited as the council debated their future, unaware that an even greater revelation awaited them in the depths of the council's most secure archives. The council archives stretched deep beneath the orbital station, level after level of stored knowledge from 12,000 years of galactic history. Hyejin walked through the main reading room with wonder in her eyes, looking at data crystals and quantum storage devices that held information from hundreds of species. Da-Yun, the human linguist and historian, was already at work at one of the access terminals. Her expertise in ancient languages had impressed the council archivists, who had granted the humans limited research access as a gesture of goodwill during the evaluation period. "This is incredible," Da-Yun said, her fingers moving across the holographic interface. "I'm looking at first contact records from species that achieved space travel 8,000 years ago. The linguistic evolution alone is fascinating." Subin sat at an adjacent terminal, her role to help process the massive amounts of data. Her skills with computers and pattern recognition made her invaluable for research like this. "I'm seeing some interesting patterns in the classification data. There are gaps." "Gaps?" Hyejin pulled up a chair beside her. "Look here." Subin highlighted sections of the classification index. "Level 1 through 9 are well documented. Hundreds of species, detailed analysis, consistent records. But there are references to higher classifications that have been redacted or removed." Da-Yun looked up from her work, interested. "Can you access the original files?" "Maybe." Subin's fingers danced across the controls. "The Council's security is sophisticated, but I'm not trying to break in. I'm just following data trails that are already semi-public. References in footnotes, cross-references in other documents." What she found made her pause. "There's a classification level 10. It's mentioned in exactly 47 documents, but every mention has been marked with a seal I haven't seen before." "What kind of seal?" Hyejin asked. A symbol appeared on the screen, a complex geometric pattern that seemed to shift and change as they looked at it. Beneath it, text in the Council's common language, Extinction Class, Restricted Access. The three humans exchanged glances. Dahyan spoke carefully. That's not a classification. That's a warning. Before they could discuss further, a presence made itself known. The terminal screens flickered, and a voice emerged from the speakers, ancient and layered with harmonics that suggested multiple consciousnesses speaking as one. "You have found what others do not seek," the voice said. "I am Keeper Ixtal, consciousness of the archive. I am bound to warn those who approach restricted knowledge. The information you seek is sealed for the protection of all species." "We mean no disrespect, Keeper," Yejin said, addressing the air since she couldn't see the entity. "We're simply researching the classification system to better understand our evaluation." "Understanding the classification system does not require knowledge of extinction class designations," Ixtal replied. "Yet you persist." "Why?" Subin answered honestly. "Because there are gaps in the public record. Gaps that relate directly to the question our diplomat asked. What exists above Apex?" A long silence followed. Then, "You are either very foolish or very dangerous to make that connection." "Perhaps both. The restricted files cannot be accessed without authorization, which you do not have." Dahyun had been studying the symbols on the screen during this exchange. Her expertise in linguistic patterns extended to understanding writing systems and symbolic logic. The seal contains a linguistic key. It's not just a lock, it's a puzzle. It's designed to be opened by those who can read the pattern. "That is correct," Ixtal said, and there was something like approval in the ancient voice. "The knowledge is restricted, but not forbidden. Those who possess the intelligence to decode the seal are deemed worthy of the truth it protects. This is the will of those who created the archive." Dahyun's eyes moved across the symbol, tracing connections and patterns. Her fingers sketched notes on a datapad. 15 minutes passed in focused silence. Then she entered a sequence into the terminal. The seal dissolved. Files began to appear on the screen. "You have opened what has remained sealed for 713 years, Ixtal said. "The last being to access these records was High Chancellor Morith. View what you have unlocked, humans, but understand that knowledge once gained cannot be forgotten." The files contained records of 6 extinct civilizations. Species that had once achieved space travel had been evaluated by the Council and had subsequently destroyed themselves. All had been classified as Level 10 Extinction Class. Subin pulled up the comparative data, running analysis algorithms. These species, they share traits, extreme adaptability, advanced tool use, pack hunting heritage, high intelligence, intra-species competition, they're all... She trailed off, her face going pale. "They're all like us," Yejin finished quietly. The records were detailed and horrifying. Each species had achieved greatness, advanced technology, complex societies, interstellar capability, and then, without exception, they had turned their capabilities inward. Wars of annihilation, weapons that scarred planets, conflicts driven by the same competitive instincts that had made them successful, scaled up to civilizational levels. "They classified each other," Dahyun said, reading through the historical records. "Just like humans did on Earth. They created hierarchies, found differences, made distinctions between their own people, and those distinctions became justifications for violence. The Council didn't destroy them," Subin said, checking the data carefully. "Each one destroyed itself. Level 10 isn't a threat rating. It's a prediction. Species that reach this level are predicted to self-destruct." Hyejin felt cold despite the comfortable temperature of the archive. "We match these profiles. That's why Morith was concerned when Taman asked his question. The Council has seen this pattern before. 6 times before. 7 times, Ixtal corrected. There is one more file. A 7th record appeared, but this one was different. Older. The data was partially corrupted. Fragments of information from 50,000 years ago. A species called themselves the Architects. Unlike the other 6, the Architects hadn't destroyed themselves. At least not in the same way. They had recognized what they were becoming and made a choice. The fragments told a story. The Architects had achieved level 10 status. They had seen the pattern in their own behavior. They had asked the question, the same question Taemin had asked. What exists above Apex? And they had tried to become it. What happened to them? Hyejin asked. The records are incomplete, Ixtal replied. But what remains suggests they succeeded in transcending their nature. They called it level 11. They called it transcendent. They had one defining trait that set them apart from all other extinction-class species. What trait? Subin asked. They chose to protect other species rather than dominate them. They used their capabilities to nurture rather than conquer. They became something that had never existed before. Predators who chose to become shepherds. Dahyun was reading the fragmentary text, using her linguistic skills to interpolate missing sections. They created the council. The Architects built this entire system, the classification index, the threat assessments, the protocols for managing dangerous species. They built it all, and then they sacrificed themselves, Ixtal said. 50,000 years ago, a threat emerged from beyond the galaxy. The records call it the consuming dark. The Architects fought it, contained it, and sealed it away. The effort required them to expend their entire civilization. They chose extinction to protect species that didn't even exist yet. The 3 humans sat in silence, processing this information. Finally, Hyejin spoke. The Council isn't just evaluating us. They're trying to determine if we're going to be the 8th extinction-class species to destroy ourselves, or if we might possibly become the 2nd species to reach level 11. Before anyone could respond, the lights in the archive brightened. High Chancellor Morith materialized in the reading room, its crystalline form pulsing with colors that suggested agitation and concern. I was alerted the moment the restricted files were accessed, Morith said. I should have anticipated that human curiosity would lead you here. Keeper Ixtal, why did you allow this? They solved the seal, the ancient consciousness replied. The Architects designed it so that any being capable of understanding the pattern deserved the truth. I am bound by their protocols. Morith's colors shifted, grudging acceptance mixing with concern. Then you know. You understand what you are, what you might become. Taemin entered the archive at that moment, having been summoned by Morith. He took in the scene quickly, his team at the terminals, the displayed files, the Chancellor's obvious distress. We understand, Taemin said, moving to stand with his colleagues. The Council's evaluation isn't about whether we're dangerous. It's about whether we're survivable, whether we'll destroy ourselves like 6 species before us, or whether we might choose a different path. Yes, Morith said simply, and I do not know the answer. Your species matches every marker of extinction-class behavior. Your combat trials proved you are Apex-level threats despite physical limitations. Your adaptability is extreme. Your competitive nature is undeniable. But you also show cooperation, unity, traits the Architects possessed. So what happens now? Hyejin asked. Now, Morith said, its voice heavy with the weight of 12,000 years of Council history. We wait. Wait and see what you become. Because humanity stands at a threshold. You can become the 8th species to achieve level 10 and destroy yourselves. Or you might possibly become the 2nd species to reach level 11. And if you can't decide? Dahyun asked quietly. If the Council determines we're too risky? Morith's silence was answer enough. If humanity was classified as extinction class and deemed too dangerous to the galaxy, the Council would act. Containment, quarantine, or worse. The lights in the archive dimmed slightly as Ixtal spoke once more. The architects left a message in these files. They knew other species would eventually access them. Would you like to hear it? Yes, Taman said. The ancient consciousness projected text in the air, translated into Korean. Simple words from 50,000 years ago, from beings who had faced the same choice humanity now faced. To those who come after, you are dangerous because you are capable of greatness. The question is not whether you will survive. The question is whether you will choose to let others survive alongside you. This is the only test that matters. The message faded. In the silence that followed, the humans understood that their evaluation had just become far more significant than they had imagined. They weren't just being judged on their abilities, they were being judged on their choices. The alarm cut through the council station like a blade, a sound that hadn't been heard in over 3,000 years. Emergency protocols activated automatically, sealing sections and routing all senior council members to the command center. Taman and his team were in the human quarters when the alert came, and they ran toward the command center without waiting for permission. Morith stood at the center of a massive holographic display showing the outer rim of council space. The crystalline chancellor's colors had gone completely dark, a sign of fear that the humans had never seen before. "What's happening?" Taman asked, entering the command center with Jiho and Jiwan, the human fleet admiral who had been stationed on one of Earth's ships in orbit. "The Vryn," Morith said simply. "They have breached our outer defenses." The holographic display showed them, ships, thousands of them, pouring through a rupture in space itself, but calling them ships didn't do justice to what they were. The Vryn were organic vessels, living creatures that existed in the void between stars. Each one was the size of a building covered in chitinous armor that reflected scanner beams. They moved with coordinated precision, a swarm intelligence that operated as a single vast organism. Vrel had arrived, its usual calm demeanor replaced with visible panic. 17 galaxies. The Vryn have consumed 17 galaxies. They were supposed to be moving away from council space. The predictive models said we had 10,000 years before they became a threat. "Predictive models can be wrong," Jiho said quietly, his military training making him focus immediately on tactical assessment. "How many defense forces can you mobilize?" "Everything," Morith replied. "We are activating all military assets. The Krell fleets, the Vinthex war swarms, the Mordrax hunter groups. Every apex species is being called to defend the council." Jiwan studied the display with the practiced eye of someone who had commanded naval operations. "How do they fight?" "They adapt," Vrel said, pulling up combat footage from ancient records. "The Vryn encounter a weapon, analyze it, and within hours their armor evolves to resist it. They face a tactic once, learn it, counter it. They are not intelligent in the way we understand intelligence. They are reactive evolution made manifest." The first engagement happened at the outer defense platforms. The display showed council ships, bristling with weapons that represented millennia of military development, opening fire on the approaching Vryn swarm. The effects were devastating at first. Dozens of Vryn vessels burst apart under concentrated fire. Then, the swarm adapted. Their armor shifted, changed color and texture. The next volley of weapons fire splashed harmlessly across their hulls. The Vryn counterattacked, launching organic projectiles that burrowed through shields and hull plating to infect the ships from within. Taman watched station after station fall. The council forces fought bravely, but they were losing. Badly. General Krax's voice came over the communication system, transmitted from his flagship. "The Krell fleet engages. We will show these creatures what apex predators can do." The Krell were magnificent in battle. Their ships were floating fortresses, armored and armed with weapons designed to destroy planets. They slammed into the Vryn swarm like a hammer, inflicting massive casualties. For 20 minutes, it looked like the Krell might turn the tide. Then the Vryn adapted to their tactics. The swarm began targeting specific systems, overwhelming individual ships with coordinated strikes. The Krell formation broke apart. The Vinthex tried next, using their hive mind coordination to match the Vryn's swarm tactics. They lasted longer than the Krell, 35 minutes of intense combat. But the Vryn learned from every exchange, adapted to every strategy. 2 hours into the battle, the Council forces had lost 40% of their strength. The Vryn hadn't even slowed down. Morith's colors were cycling through shades of despair. We cannot stop them. We must evacuate. Implement scorched earth protocols. Deny them resources. Chancellor, Taman said quietly, let us help. Every being in the command center turned to look at him. Morith's voice carried disbelief. You have 12 ships, primitive vessels by galactic standards. What could you possibly do against an enemy that has defeated our apex forces? I don't know, Taman admitted. But we're here, and we have capabilities you haven't evaluated yet. Let G1 take our ships into combat. If we fail, you've lost nothing you weren't already losing. If we succeed, you might survive. The silence stretched. Then Vrel spoke. The humans defeated General Krax using tactics he had never encountered. Perhaps the Vryn have never encountered human tactics either. Very well, Morith said. Admiral G1, your fleet is authorized to engage. May whatever gods you believe in protect you. G1 was already moving toward the docking bay, pulling up tactical displays on her personal device. Ji-Ho, I need you coordinating ground forces in case they board the station. Minho, get your pilots ready. Soman, I need engineering miracles. We're going to do things these ships were never designed to do. The human fleet jumped into the combat zone 15 minutes later. 12 ships, small by galactic standards, built with technology that the Council considered primitive. They didn't have energy shields like Council vessels. Their weapons were kinetic and chemical, not exotic energy types. Their armor was simple metal alloys. The Council watched from the command center, expecting to see the human fleet destroyed in minutes. What happened instead defied every prediction their tactical computers made. G1 didn't engage the Vryn directly. Instead, she had her ships scatter, each one moving on an independent course that seemed random until viewed as a whole. They were herding the Vryn, using careful positioning to manipulate the swarm's movements. What is she doing? Vrel asked, watching the tactical display in confusion. She's not trying to fight them, Taman said, beginning to understand. She's studying them. Look at the scanner data. Every ship is running different types of scans, testing different approaches. Soman's voice came over the communication channel. Admiral, we've identified a pattern in their adaptation cycle. They need approximately 7.3 minutes to fully counter a new threat. Sending the data to all ships now. Confirmed, G1 responded. All ships, implement rotation protocol. Launch window Alpha. One human ship broke formation and accelerated directly at a cluster of Vryn vessels. Its weapons opened fire, using every type of ammunition in rapid succession. Missiles, railgun rounds, chemical explosives, even crude nuclear devices. The Vryn cluster took heavy damage, then began adapting. 6 minutes later, just before the adaptation would complete, the human ship broke off. A different ship immediately took its place, attacking from a new angle with different weapons. The Vryn had to start their adaptation cycle over. They're resetting the adaptation process, Morith said, colors shifting to something like hope. By rotating attack patterns before full adaptation completes, they prevent the Vryn from developing effective counters. But the real shock came when Minho's fighter squadron launched. The small craft weren't trying to destroy Vryn vessels. They were boarding them. That's suicide, Vrel said. No one can survive inside a Vryn ship. They're toxic, hostile environments. Minho's voice came through, slightly distorted by interference. We're not trying to survive long-term. We just need 60 seconds. The fighters punched through Vryn hulls using shaped charges, deposited their pilots inside the living ships, and pulled away. The human soldiers inside carried modified mining equipment, explosive charges, and simple chemical weapons. They targeted nervous clusters, sensory organs, anything that looked important. The damage wasn't about destroying the ships. It was about causing pain and confusion to creatures that had never experienced being boarded before. 3 Vryn vessels went dark, their swarm connections severed by internal damage. 2 more began moving erratically, their navigation systems compromised. The Vryn swarm's coordination faltered. Jiho had been watching the entire engagement, his tactical mind working through possibilities. They're reactive, not predictive. They respond to what we do, but they don't anticipate what we'll do next. That's the weakness. Jiwon, he transmitted, send this data to Soman. I think we can exploit this further. What followed was something the Council had never seen in 12,000 years of warfare. Soman began reconfiguring the human ships mid-battle, using modular systems that the Council hadn't realized were modular. Weapons systems became sensor packages. Engines were recalibrated for different thrust patterns. The ships themselves were changing faster than the Vryn could adapt. One ship detonated its own reactor, not as a suicide attack, but as a controlled explosion that generated an electromagnetic pulse across a massive area. Vryn vessels went dormant, their biological electrical systems overloaded. Before they could recover, other human ships swept through with kinetic weapons, destroying the helpless targets. Another ship released its entire oxygen supply in a massive cloud, then ignited it with a single tracer round. The resulting explosion wasn't powerful enough to destroy Vryn vessels, but the sudden heat and pressure change disrupted their swarm coordination signals. They're not fighting fair, General Krax observed, watching from his damaged flagship. There was respect in his voice. Humans never fight fair, Jiho replied over the open channel. Fair fighting is for species that can afford to lose. We evolved by refusing to accept defeat. The battle continued for another 2 hours. The human fleet took heavy damage. 6 of their 12 ships were destroyed or disabled, but they held the line. More importantly, they broke the Vryn swarm's coordination. The alien vessels that had moved as one mind began operating as individuals, their adaptation cycles disrupted by the constantly changing human tactics. When the Vryn finally retreated, pulling back through the rupture in space, the Council Command Center was absolutely silent. The holographic display showed the battlefield, scattered with the debris of both Council and Vryn vessels, and 5 battered human ships limping back toward the station. Moreth's crystalline form had returned to its normal colors, but now they included shades that none of the humans had seen before. Awe, wonder, perhaps fear. You defeated them, the Chancellor said quietly. An enemy that has consumed 17 galaxies, an enemy beyond our classification system. You defeated them with primitive technology and 12 ships. Jawan's face appeared on the communication screen, exhausted but calm. We didn't defeat them, Chancellor. We convinced them that attacking you wasn't worth the cost. They'll adapt to what we did eventually. But today, they learned that humanity makes everything more expensive than it should be. Vrel's antennae were trembling. The Vryn have never retreated, never in any recorded encounter across multiple galaxies. You made them leave. We showed them that we're too annoying to bother with, Soman said, her image appearing beside Jiwon's. Every human who's ever dealt with a persistent mosquito understands this principle. Taemin watched the council members process what they had witnessed. He could see the calculations happening behind their eyes, the reassessment of everything they thought they knew about humanity. You fought like level 3 prey, Krax said slowly. Using tricks, adaptation, refusing direct confrontation. But you won like something that has no classification. You won because you refused to fight the way combat is supposed to work. Combat doesn't have rules, Jiho said simply. Only survivors and casualties. We evolved to be survivors. High Chancellor Morith turned its full attention to the humans in the command center. When it spoke, its voice carried a weight of authority and decision that made everyone pay attention. Humanity's evaluation is complete. The Council will convene in 1 hour to determine your final classification. What we have witnessed today will factor heavily in that determination. As the command center cleared, Taman stood with his team, looking out at the stars through the massive viewport. They had proven themselves in combat, but he knew that what came next would be even more important. The Council had seen what humans could do in war. Now they had to decide if humans could be trusted in peace.